I'm starting to realize I have the same problem in this game that I have in real life. I start a lot of projects, which means I frequently do not finish them in what most people would consider a normal time frame. Fortunately, I didn't start any new projects this week. Well, except for one. But listen, it didn't take very long, and it did help. But that didn't happen until day 30. All I could think of at the start of day 25 was how I had messed up the second floor already. I needed to get rid of some of these terracotta blocks. After checking my design, I realized there are supposed to be barrels here. So glad they were added to the game. I'm proud to say I only had to run down the stairs once before I realized it would be more efficient to just make another crafting table for the second floor. Will it stay there? Who knows? That is a problem for future me. And now all of the barrels for this floor are in. I still didn't have a roof, but I figured it was time to move one of the cyan beds to the bedroom, and add some side tables. I then realized that if my bedroom would have access to the topmost barrel in my kitchen, it would make sense to move the completed stews up there. It was at this point that I remembered I hadn't mixed in andesite in parts of my basement wall, so I did that. I finished the stairwell too. It looks much better now. I also filled in the space under the stairs with more barrels. I think I'll store all of my nether stuff in this area, since it's right next to the portal. Next day, I finally realized I should probably add a crafting table to the basement, too. Since I was in the basement, I kept thinking about how I needed to finish the floor. I decided to give the basalt a try, since I knew I had access to plenty of it. I was happy with it so far, so I started preparing for going back to the nether. The basalt deltas have all those small pockets of lava, so I thought I should craft a few more buckets. I was about to craft a bunch of buckets when I remembered I hadn't finished the smelting array on the other end of my basement. So I started working on that. Somehow I had forgotten that blast furnaces require smooth stone. Next, I finished adding in the brick and granite wall behind the array. I just realized when reviewing the footage that I forgot the hoppers to connect the fuel barrels, and the fuel barrel for the blast furnace won't even work on that side. Oops, guess I'll have to fix that next week. I figured I should start removing the current floor in preparation for the basalt. Fortunately, this meant gathering more andesite, and I even found some coal. However, when I finally resumed preparing my inventory for the nether, I only had enough iron to make one additional bucket. 2 buckets is still good, though. I grabbed a stew as well, just in case. It then occurred to me that, instead of a window, it might be more useful to have a back door to my house, especially since the deep cave was in that direction. The next morning, I was experimenting to see if I could improve the entryways. I think I was yet again procrastinating going to the nether. Finally, I went back through the portal. Once again, I tried to be careful around the magma blocks. Last week's future me had become this week's present me. So, after scooping up the lava and safely tucking it away in my inventory, I worked at removing the magma blocks. I then started working on gathering at least a stack each of blackstone and basalt. I've never been that good at estimating how many blocks I'll need. I figured a stack would be a good starting point, though. My controller had been acting up repeatedly during this play session, despite the fact that I had made sure it was fully charged, so I was trying to be even more careful than usual. However, I didn't have any problems with it while I was in the nether. So you know what? If having problems in the overworld means I don't just walk off into the lava sea, I think I can deal with it. And so, after around 7 minutes in the nether, I was ready to return home. I immediately continued installing the basalt flooring. I even got a nice rhythm going. I might use this pattern again. I think it fits the color palette without being too similar. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I still had some basalt left over. Time to start using my nether storage area, I guess. I needed more terracotta for the second floor, so I went on a clay digging expedition that night. The first floor is done with terracotta though, so I am making progress. With the terracotta smelting, I decided to spend the next day in the deep cave. I wanted 6 more pieces of obsidian for the corners of my basement, as well as more iron for lava buckets. I was turning more of the lava into obsidian when I discovered that this lava pool opened up to more caves. Which of course meant gathering more iron, and coal, and finding what turned out to be one of the most disappointing dead ends I've encountered yet. At least I found enough gold for a replacement golden apple. I then found another dead end, but this time with a gravel ceiling. As I've said before, I don't build with it, but I do feel compelled to dig all of it out. Not sure why, and since there are no villagers, I can't even trade the flint for emeralds. I could use it to make concrete, or to duplicate dirt. But this did mean that I found more coal. The next day I was still underground and still clearing away gravel. I was on my way to block off this particular dead end when I heard thunder. My house still does not have a roof and is very flammable. Why do I leave my projects unfinished? I should at least consider bringing a bed with me down to the mines. I'm surprised because this is now the second thunderstorm I've had within 5 days. The last one was on day 24. From what I've read, it might be happening so frequently because I've been working through most of the nights instead of sleeping. So I may need to start sleeping through at least some of the night. I was very surprised when I reached the surface and the sky was blue instead of gray like I was expecting. It also wasn't raining, probably because of the biome the cave is in. I was concerned that I would be out in the open for too long if I tried to run straight to my house, so I ran from tree to tree until I made it to the village. I wish I hadn't taken the bed out of this house on the end. In retrospect, I probably should have gone to this house on the right, but I had it in my mind that I needed to get to the double house. My excuse is that I was panicked. All of these houses have flammable roofs. Whose idea was it to make village houses have wooden roofs? Needless to say, day 29 was very, very short. Yeah, I either need to get to work making all of the buildings lightning-proof, or I need to have a bed with me at all times. I might lose most of the day, but at least I'll stay alive and my builds won't be reduced to ash. I was home again, so I chucked all of my ores into the furnace array and added the obsidian corners to my basement. With yesterday's terrifying storm fresh in my memory, I started working on the polished blackstone brick roof. Yeah, I'm definitely going to have to go back for more blackstone. Once again, I needed bone meal for the white terracotta. The second floor is starting to take shape. Having collected all the bone meal I could from my farm, I decided to go clay gathering once more. I then remembered I had my map with me, so I figured I'd start working on filling that in since I'd be following the river and wandering around anyway. I had been thinking about filling in the map earlier, along with making the 8 surrounding maps for it, but again, I know I have too many concurrent projects. But hey, I already made this map, so maybe it wasn't too big of a new project to start. I was still following the river and collecting clay when the sun rose. I headed south to fill in that portion of the map. On the way, I found a field of cornflowers and another desert. At least I would have options for getting my glass. With the southwest corner of the map filled, I headed east. There were more savanna plateaus and a river that seemed to bisect the lower half of the map. I elected to go around the plateaus and crossed the river once I saw a valley. I then saw some bright green leaves, and the map showed a more vibrant green area on top of one of the plateaus. I thought maybe I'd finally found a jungle, but it turns out it was a shattered savanna. It might not be a jungle, but it's still cool. But not as cool as what I found on the other side. A pillager outpost. I looked it up, and apparently they're not supposed to generate in shattered savannas. I'm guessing it technically generated in the normal savanna, but since it was so close to the shattered savanna, it was forced to have this ridiculously tall foundation. Especially since I didn't see an entrance on the ground. So I went up the mountain to find a way in. Ah, there's the entrance. It's a good thing I brought this cobblestone with me. It was an interesting structure for sure, but I was most interested in checking the loot. Yes! String! I could finally make a fishing rod. I'd be able to get fortune and mending and all that good stuff for my gear. Not sure what I'll do with the crossbow, but that's cool too. I just grabbed the whole chest, save myself 8 planks the next time I make a hopper, you know? Wait, so is this just solid birch all the way down to the floor? Nice, free wood. I'll have to come back here at some point. Maybe I can start a second base here? Or even a museum or trophy room. Yeah, trophy tower, that sounds like a solid plan. Once I made it back to the floor, I decided to investigate the large red line on my map. It was on my way home anyway. Turns out it was a massive ravine. Ugh, don't want to fall in that. Ah, home sweet unfinished home. I started the terracotta smelting, and crafted my first fishing rod for this world. I would only later remember that it would be a better use of my time to just wait until it started raining, but what can I say? I was excited. Books, salmon, and other goodies were finally within my grasp. First thing I caught was cod, of course, but the very next thing was salmon. Best renewable food source without mobs, here I come. Next morning I paused fishing until a storm happened and placed the salmon and cod in the smoker array. Apparently cooked cod has the same saturation as bread, so I guess it's worth cooking them too. Time for the second floor's ceiling, or so I thought. Turns out it was actually time to continue fishing. I like fishing. It gives me an opportunity to have some downtime in the game where I can still feel productive. It's helpful when I need some time to think things over. For example, if cod has the same value as bread, did I really need to work at expanding my farm? I haven't been paying super close attention to how quickly I go through bread, but I wonder if I could just get by with the cod and salmon I catch whenever it rains. Hay bales can be useful for reducing fall damage, so I may still want to farm wheat. Beetroot is useful for red dye, as well as all of the other dyes that require red. Baked potatoes have the same value as bread, so those are redundant too. As for the carrots and pumpkins, I think they're only useful as bone meal now, which I will continue to need for my mushrooms. After looking it up, carrots and potatoes appear to be the best option for bone meal, at least for the crops I have. And for some reason, baked potatoes are better for composting than regular potatoes? So that's another use for my smoker, I guess. Ooh, I got a book with depth strider and fire protection. That'll be good for boots. It was well into the night when the storm finally stopped. I decided to keep all of my fishing loot in these barrels near the furnaces. I have to come down here to throw the cod and salmon into the smoker anyway. I also felt I should add some proper lighting to this area of the basement. I also need to add something to the corners, but I'm not sure what. To hopefully prevent any future thunderstorms, I decided to sleep the rest of the night away. First time using my bedroom, hope it won't be the last. Until next time, take care.